concerned about what sort of signal does that send? What sort of other products now? Does this mean if I have a pig that I slaughter for my own consumption, you know, theoretically, could someone now make the argument that, well, with a cow share, you have to have there's this regulation you have to follow. Do I now have to have regulation on another product that is my own property? It doesn't belong to anybody. It's my property, and now in order to consume it, I have to abide with some sort of regulation, and that's my concern about potentially opening that door.
Nick, you know that's not my intent.
No, I understand it's not yours.
My point, the milk is not going to be on the farm to where it was produced. To me, for the potential safety implications, at a time when we're actually looking at saying raw milk can now be in your refrigerator at home, to me this would be the logical time that we're separating cow share, goat share agreements totally apart and separate, except as it relates to if it's in a bottle in your fridge, we know where it came from. That farm would be under no obligation for any type of inspection or other regulation as established here for someone who wants to sell raw milk, and I purposefully didn't put in here where they'd have to have it labeled as not for resale, because it was never sold in the first place. And so that was the distinction I was trying to draw by making it a totally different, separate section, and specifically saying that it doesn't come under B, D, C, E, or F. Yeah, this is a different critter, but we ought to know the farm it came from, is all I'm suggesting.
Well, we have discussion on amendment. Did you want to make that as a motion?
Yes, I move that.
Do I have a second on the amendment? Okay, all in favor of the amendment, so please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the bill is amended is before us. Okay. Let's see, do we have anyone here that wishes to speak in favor of this measure, speak to this measure? Now, we've heard this measure, same thing like to him. I've only been here 9 years, but I heard it every single year since I've been here. So please, we enjoy hearing your testimony. Tell us something, and then if anyone else wants to speak, tell us something different.
Well, first and foremost, I'm just a citizen. I'm not an expert, so I don't know what you all have heard. I'm just here to express my 2 cents for what it's worth, doing my due diligence, talking to my legislators about what's important to me. I'm a father of 7, and my kids have been drinking, y'all call it raw milk. I call it real milk. Because, you know, the white liquid that masquerades as milk in the store shelves is halfway dead, and my kids wouldn't touch it up until I went and got the real milk, and now I have to ration it because it flies off. Now, the only part of this bill, everything sounds good except for, and I'm a little confused about if you wanted me to address the initial one or the amendment.
Well, the entire bill as amended is before us now.
Okay, great. So in the initial part, there was something about the farmer can't sell anything off but on their property. And I'm a little confused. I just want to understand, right now the farmer delivers it to a drop point where me and my fellow citizens go and pick it up. Is that considered a sale off? Because I pay my farmer, you know, electronically, and so they get the payment on their farm when they get it on, however that works. But I want to make sure that, you know, I'm not going to have to drive an hour each way to go pick up my 2 gallons of milk every week.
Well, the way that, Bobby,
Sir, if I understand, you're getting it now under a cow share.
Yes, sir.
And the only thing that would be different is that gallon you get it in, if this passes, would have the farmer's address on the container.
I understand it, sir.
That's all we change.
My concern is something different. Actually, I want to come back to that, but my concern is about the sale not allowed off property.
Because you didn't buy the milk. You bought a share of a cow, and that's a private contract, and that wouldn't be changed by this legislation except putting that address label on it.
Thank you for clarifying that. So that concern is allayed. As far as the labeling part, I'm confused as to at what point is this milk not identified? I mean, when it's on the farmer's property, clearly it's identified. When it's at the drop point, the entrepreneur there can clearly identify who dropped it off there. If it's in my fridge, I definitely can not only give you the email address, phone number, whatever you need of the source. So I'm just, and I'm also, as an American, I'm concerned about my privacy and not having to be part of a database someplace, or this information being collected. I'm more than happy to share this information. I have it. I'm not sure at what point in the supply line this product remains unidentified. That's just my 2 cents.
Anyone else here to speak to the measure? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, just from reading this, I didn't understand, is the intent of this bill to make raw milk legal for the whole state? Okay, so it would make it legal for the state, and I'm just really concerned about my farmer and if these regulations, I mean, we've seen in other states, like in Washington State, where there was a renowned dairy that created Estella cheese, really great raw milk cheese that rivaled the cheeses of France. So I know that they came down and completely ruined their business over something that was unclear in the regulations. And I'm just concerned that you're going to take some of these same regulations for big dairies and apply them to my small dairy, my farmer, and then it'll be something they can't comply with. And then really you're just going to kill the small farmers that are providing raw milk, which largely that's what we have now, very small farms. I mean, maybe 20, 30 cows. So that's my concern.
Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Josiah Tillett. I'm on the board of Virginia Independent Consumers and Farmers Association, and came here today in support of the substitute language introduced by Delegate Freitas. With the amendment that's been put on, at this time, we do not ask you to continue with that amendment with that language because essentially, well, the people that are doing herd shares right now, they're already doing that. They're already labeling where their product's coming from. What we don't want to do is have the regulation in the code where they have to do it because they're already following best practices voluntarily. They're dealing with their friends and neighbors. They're dealing with their own personal networks, their own local isolated networks. That's where this product is going to. And so I would just ask you to reconsider and go back to the original language. Otherwise, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But thank you.
Chairman, just for clarification, the amendment clearly says nothing else of the regulatory process would apply to a cow share. None of them. There would be no registration. The only purpose, and I think this gentleman kind of spoke to my argument, if his farmer is 2 hours removed from where he lives, and heaven forbid, but there's a health issue, and they deem it may be related to the milk, and heaven forbid you're not well enough to be able to tell them the details, then in your refrigerator, here's a carton, and here's the address of the farm it came from. Because I think as a matter of public safety, and potentially the other herd share customers, I can envision personally this going forward that many farmers may have both herd shares and direct farm sales. So if there's a problem anywhere in the process, we all want to be able, the consumers and the public as a whole want to know there's a problem on this farm and we need to get to it sooner rather than later, so we can't waste 2 or 3 days of the health department folks doing kind of detective work to find out where that farm is located. And then the problem has multiplied in the health field. I'm not trying to mess up any herd share agreements or goat share. I just want us to be able to know where that farm is. So if there's a problem, we know where to go and try and resolve it.
I understand your intentions, and I appreciate your intentions. My problem is, it's as Delegate Freitas said, that you're dealing with someone's personal property, and you're essentially erecting a regulatory barrier to them having access to their personal property by saying that they have to have these bottles labeled. This is the same subcommittee that just voted against GMO labeling. Just to put that out there as a, so that would just be my feedback. But thank you for, obviously we're as committed to public safety as you are, but we don't want to see a mandate like this put on someone's personal property. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, my name is Wilmer Stone. I represent the Virginia Farm Bureau Federation. And we appreciate Delegate Freitas meeting us at least this far. Many of the principles that are in here are principles that we provided to him about this subject. We've dealt with this subject for decades, and it's not going away. It's something that obviously people demand, and so it's time to create some type of healthy way to get this done. And so rather than nitpick this thing in the legislature, we offered the opportunity to have VDEX create a regulatory program to address this. The bullet points are in here. The only bullet point that wasn't in the original substitute was the discussion of cow shares, and we believe the discussion of cow or goat shares is a separate and distinct item that we need to discuss. We've talked about how it's legal or how it's not legal or those types of things. The issue is we got to at least address it somehow in the legislation to make sure that those health concerns are taken care of. Without question, Delegate Knight, you asked about the reenactment or another shot at it. And that's the reason we put this sunset clause on here, was that it expires July 1st, 2021, because it's going to take at least 2 years to create this regulation. We believe that a full Administrative Process Act application needs to be in place with public hearings, as you can see, with a stakeholder group to discuss all the possibilities. That's going to take 18 months to 2 years. It may take longer, but the other side of the coin is if the department creates a regulation, puts it in place, then we get to test drive it a little bit, maybe. That is, if we can come to agreement about all these things. But we think the appropriate place to discuss this is at the Department of Agriculture. Let the experts deal with the subject, see where we go, and then again have this reenactment clause on here. Before I sit down, there is one additional amendment that has to occur, and it just somehow didn't get in there. But on line 83, where it says, "and shall allow the department to trace foodborne illness," the department doesn't do that. The commissioner does that. And so that word needs to become commissioner, and then I think you've got it. But again, these are the principles that we put forward. We appreciate the delegate working with us. We do think that in some form or fashion we support Delegate Orrock's amendment to say at a minimum it needs to be labeled in some fashion, but cow sharing and goat sharing needs to be separate and distinct from the other raw milk provision. And so with that, we support the legislation as it's been amended.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman? Yes. Can I make that motion? Yes. I move we amend the substitute on line 83, we strike department and insert commissioner.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Can we get the rest of the testimony? Go ahead. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Very quickly, Melinda McCall, Virginia Veterinary Medical Association. Just have a couple concerns. Do appreciate the intent of this. We can never get behind raw milk for all the obvious reasons, but where it says in line 84, any producer of raw milk for sale shall have an ongoing relationship with the veterinarian. I challenge you to say, how is that going to happen? Is that going to happen at the time of the inspection? Will they be required to show veterinary records, or how will that happen?
Mr. Chairman,
I guess it'd be a question for Wilma. Is the intent of that line to be similar to, I'm a beef cattle person, to have, for my herd health, et cetera, I now federally have to have a relationship with my veterinarian?
Again, it is simply a topic for the regulatory process to solve. I mean, this is just a bullet point. Somehow or another, VDAX is going to work through the process of how to do it. But we're saying that there needs to be some type of relationship with the veterinarian.
And we totally agree with that. We just think like him as a beef cattle producer would eventually need antibiotics. A lot of these people don't use antibiotics. They don't use things that would require them to have a veterinarian for any other reason per se. And then the only other thing about the cow shares, I do think the cow shares should be addressed. I've been called to work for people like, let's say you were the head honcho of the cow share, and the cow was at your place, called to do testing on these cattle, and then when there was a problem, I said, okay, release the rest of your cow share owners so I can report the results. And oh, guess what? Then the cow goes back to having one owner again. So, you know, there's definitely some problems there about, and I'm not saying that's everybody. I'm saying that there are those concerns out there. But I do think the relationship with the veterinarian needs to be a little bit more defined. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else speak?
Mr. Chairman, Katie Frazier with the Virginia Agribusiness Council. You've been dealing with this issue for 9 years. I think every session that I've been down here for the past 12 or 13, I've lost track now, and we've had a similar piece of legislation. The Virginia Agribusiness Council has had a history of opposing the sale of raw milk, but I will say that this effort by Delegate Freitas and working with Farm Bureau and working with us certainly has moved the ball forward, and it does provide for some additional regulations and restrictions that help to alleviate some of our food safety concerns that we have. I will say that we really do appreciate the delegate working with us on it. You know, I can't undo what our policy position is because it's voted on by our members, but you know, in the spirit of helping to move something towards compromise, we certainly would be willing to stay at the table. I do want to just reiterate, and I've spoken, I think, pretty clearly to the delegate about this, that the issue of cow and herd shares is an issue of great concern for us. Obviously, the amendment that Delegate Orak put forward begins to address that, but there have been some public health outbreaks associated with cow and herd shares, and so I know other states, when they've looked at this, have dealt with the actual contract law that's established, and so that may be a direction that things may move in the future should this piece of legislation move forward. And then finally, I do want to say you're going to hear from some of my members behind me that are outright opposed to it, so I don't want to make any bones about it that our membership is 110% behind this legislation, but I did want to reiterate that we believe that it's moving at least in a direction that gives us more comfort. Thank you.
Thank you. We have our new state veterinarian.
Yes, sir.
Welcome,
Thank
sir.
you. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Charlie Broadus, state veterinarian with Virginia Department of Agriculture. The administration does oppose the original bill and would oppose the substitute on the same grounds. Just did a quick look of looking through the substitute. First time I'm really looking through it in detail, but there are a few issues that bring to your attention. On line 76, where it mentions the labeling there, that might be an area better left up to the regulatory process. I have some concerns that just not for resale would not go far enough, and there may need to be, it may be more appropriate to have a warning statement such as this milk has not been pasteurized and may contain bacteria which may cause illness or something like that, but I wouldn't want to be constrained that not for resale was the only labeling requirement there. On line 82, where it talks about testing and inspection, currently dairy inspections occur by our dairy field staff throughout the day, every day during working hours without notification. The requirement that vendors be notified that they're going to be inspected, the dairies be notified they're going to be inspected would require additional time and resources beyond what's currently available. In reality, it would be somewhat burdensome to the dairy to have to schedule that. Right now, it's a fairly easy process. The milk inspector shows up and does their thing, does their inspection. The third issue that I note here is in response to the chairman's question. I think originally, as far that he mentioned before, is in line 79, talking about were similar standards appropriate for small farms. That isn't really defined very well, and we would bring to everyone's attention that all sanitation does require some capital expense. We currently work with dairies as small as 1, 2, and 3 cows. Our program does inspect those for those ones that want to come voluntarily and become a grade A dairy and sell that way. And so we're used to dealing with that on a smaller scale, and we'd be able to do that. So it might be something to consider to remove that similar standards appropriate for small farms, because we already include that. And I guess those are just a few of them that come out. It's not entirely comprehensive, but those are some of the issues that I see with the bill right now.
What we're going to do is, of course, like Wilmer said, you know, we're going to go before regulations on this. The thing that you brought up that I am a little concerned on is, Delegate, where, on line 82, such testing and inspection shall include notice of routine inspections. We may want to consider that a may, because they don't, we're kind of mandating for this legislation, they shall let us know, and they don't let other dairy farms in the state know also.
I move that.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor of that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're gonna put the may in there. You got a question for Delegate Burton?
For the gentleman,
Yes, sir.
you mentioned that it would include additional resources. What kind of additional resources are we talking about?
Yes, sir, that is to be determined, but it could be anywhere up to 150 or so additional dairies to provide inspections on. So it's,
Sorry, further question, Mr. Chairman. So how many dairies does one inspector do?
right now, we have, we inspect about 600 grade A dairies in the state with a staff of 10 inspectors. So complete average 60 farms per inspector.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else wish to speak to this measure? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Ann Buto. I'm also a member of Virginia Independent Consumers and Farmers Association, but these are my opinions. I have a couple of thoughts to do with the inspections and the testing of the facilities being the same frequency and stuff. A lot of these farms are not going to be big farms, like small farms, and when people come onto a small farm, the farmhouse might be there, the milking shed would be over there. Inspectors will be walking through the private area around people's houses. On commercial farms, you generally have a farmhouse and then you have the big barnyard over there. So invasion of privacy with inspections isn't such an issue. I don't think it should be on the same frequency as conventional dairy, and also I think that there should be notification of intended inspection. Another question my daughter brought up was these inspections and testing, are they going to be paid for by the cow owner, or are they going to be paid for by the Department of Agriculture? Who has to pay?
Mr. Chairman, I think I can answer that. In the legislation, it would be handled the same as any other dairy, therefore the Commonwealth would absorb that cost.
Okay. And there was, the definition of what is a small farm and the cost of setting up to be compliant with sanitary standards and things. There's a small farm of 90 goats in the valley, and they got licensed. It cost her over $20,000 to get set up to become a grade A dairy, to sell raw milk. And that's a lot of money. You have to sell an awful lot of milk in order to get your money back. So I just have a few reservations. I support the concept of having raw milk for sale, but I'm just a bit concerned about some of the items in the language. That's all.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, sir.
Eric Paulson with Virginia State Dairymen's Association. I appreciate what all the members and the delegate have done with this bill, but we still remain opposed to the sale of raw milk here in Virginia. Just as last year we had a case of E. coli 157 outbreak traced back to a herd share with raw milk. 14 people sickened, 12 of those 14 under the age of 18, and 7 of those 12 under the age of 9 years old. 4 cases had to be hospitalized, 3 had kidney failure, and 1 had to go dialysis. And this is all traced back to a cow share that even this measure wouldn't even touch, and I have real concerns that you can play in separate classes of cows. We have a grade A permit in Virginia that doesn't matter what size, we have 30 to 50 cow dairies in Virginia that comply by those standards, and now we're creating a different standard, and our concern is you could have a dairy that, for whatever reason, couldn't pass one of the inspections or failed to result. They could just say, well, okay, we're just going to be a cow share now, and they could just drop down one level, and there's no real notification to the consumer that could happen. So we just have some real concerns with that, plus the fiscal impact. We already have a stretched thin dairy inspection staff, and that's something we really highly regard our quality of our milk here in Virginia, and that's our #1 priority. And so an issue like this, an outbreak like what we had, those are the kind of things that the industry worries about if you start allowing this on a large scale.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Diane Willard from the Health Department, and I have to say the same sort of thing. Of course, we're concerned about anything that would increase the consumption of raw milk. We think it can't be made safe, and that the more consumption there is, the greater the risk of illness associated with the consumption.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm Larry Seamus from Rural Virginia Milk Producers. We have about 1,500 dairy farms scattered over several states. We take a lot of pride in what we produce and work with producers to help them, and the producers work really hard. They are very, very concerned if we approve a raw milk bill and there's an outbreak. The thing that's going to happen, it's going to affect all milk sales, regardless of whether it's raw milk or conventional milk. And for that reason, I could not support this bill.
Thank you. Okay. I think we're okay. Committee.
Question. Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, let me commend Delegate Freitas for the progress he's made. I've only been on this subcommittee maybe 2 or 3 years now, and I've seen this bill every single year, so I'm up to speed on that. We've also seen samples brought here as well, so I'm glad that we've had that conversation. And I mean, I like the approach that you're going with this. The only question I would have, just because I'm not an expert in this area at all, is as we're developing these regs, is there a role for the Health Commission to be part of that? And I refer to, in the existing code of lines 19, 20, and 21, in the context of regular milk, talks about regulations concerning the processing and distribution of grade A market milk, etc., shall be adopted with the advice and guidance of the state health commissioner. I don't see similar language in this new regulation that we're developing for raw milk, and I'm just wondering, obviously when you have the word stakeholders including, it could always include people, but to the extent that we're listing specifically ag industry experts and others in the trades and the business side of things, does it make sense for us to also add the state commissioner of health as part of that stakeholder group so that it's very explicit that we're talking about the health aspect as well? That'd be the one thing that I'd suggest, and for me, that might be the one thing that's really important for me to support this measure, because to the extent that we're trying to get this out of the legislators' hands and not micromanage, but to give it to the authorities and the experts, I want to make sure that the experts are the right experts in the room, not just 1 or 2 people that might just kind of represent everybody, but that we really have help. So, suggestion.
And to that point, Mr. Chairman, I mean, I know we listed some in here. Would the gentleman feel comfortable if we change the language on line 67 to say, instead of saying stakeholders including, if we said stakeholders included but not limited to, and then I'm sure that the board would include the state health commission. If you would feel more comfortable with specifically naming them,
Mr. Chairman, this is Mary. Scott, don't we frequently in these will put other state agencies and? Yes. And I would do it in more generic fashion if that's agreeable with the patron. The board shall work with other the board with other state agencies shall, or however it's got the magic word. That's good.
Other state agencies.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, I would say on line 67, subsection F, the board shall, working in conjunction with other state agencies and stakeholders, including.
You want to make that motion?
Yes, move my own line.
All in favor of that, say aye. Now, what's your pleasure?
We haven't had any discussion of liability. I don't know where to take that, but if we implement this and the regulations are passed and this happens, and there is some bad milk somewhere, somebody gets sick or even dies with it, who's going to be sued?
I think the lawyers and the courts are going to figure that one out. I mean, I hate to say it, that's true.
The chairman having grown up on the dairy farm, I can tell you the liability attached to the farm.
That's right.
That if we produce it, people get sick, we're liable.
That's right.
Would that be part of the regulations? Anything in there? Could it be?
It's not for commercial dairy now that I'm aware of.
There's limits to liability on farms, you know, with your farm insurance.
It's for it,
Yes. Yes.
There's nothing anywhere now that commercial dairy has to.
Okay. Committee, what's your pleasure?
I move to report as amended.
Okay, we'll have a second. Mr. Chairman, I have a motion on the table. Let me get a second first. Is there going to be a second to this motion?
I would second that. I was just wondering what.
Well, that's fine. We'll get the motion and second on there. We'll open up the discussion within the committee.
Whoever.
Doug Weber, if you have a question.
Well, I just had a question in regards to the fact that the state veterinarian said this would include additional resources, would those be resources that they can currently absorb? Or would you need a new appropriation?
That's a good question, but I think we'll figure that one out.
I would withdraw my second to see whether there's any conversation about referring.
Well,
On the underlying policy, we just,
Yeah,
I would prefer to move.
There's none now because it's just going through the regulatory
That's
process.
right, it's gonna be a couple of years.
Temporal, let's move it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Two nays. Three nays?
Bipartisan support.
Nays, raise your hand, please. Who are they? Three, 1, 2, 3, 4 to go forward. Is that right?
I'm very confused if it's 4 no's.
4 to 3.
Just 4 to 3.
Okay.
4 yes.
Is that 7 up here, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I thought you were saying there were 4 no's.
No, ma'am. I think
Okay.
there's 3 no's.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I was confused too.
Your bill report, Sally.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But you probably ought to be a committee.
You should.
We'll kill that here.
Is Delegate Morrison here? Okay. Delegate Ferris? Yes, sir.
Come on, cuz.
Oh, no. I make a way. We're gonna treat your bill today.
Do what?
We're gonna treat your bill today.
So Matthew was here. Yes.
I have it now, and it's gonna pay, but
Yeah, he's,
if you've got 3 cows, you probably don't have it.
If we're still here. Okay, committee, let's give our attention to Delegate Ferris. And Delegate Ferris, your bill number.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my bill number is 2381.
Okay.
And this bill is this was brought to me by some friends after the Attorney General made an opinion about what he thought the code said a dangerous dog was, and what it really amounted to is that anytime there was a report of a dog bite, the animal control wardens had to go to the magistrates and ask them to allow them to prosecute as a dangerous dog. It didn't give them any discretion. Didn't let them do their job that we're paying them to do. So,
So you've replaced the shall with a may.
well,
Basic.
Not
yes,
the
sir.
basic.
Yes, sir. Basically, I sure have.
Okay.
So under current statute, the animal control officer really had no, I guess, discretion in regards to the injury. If there was an injury, regardless if the person that was bit or whatever just was like, hey, this was an accident, I happened to be reaching across or something and the dog was reaching for a squirrel or whatever and got caught, the officer currently doesn't have any of that discretion to not have to do anything, correct?
That's exactly right.
And this bill seeks to do that.
Exactly right.
No,
But I
Mr.
got
Chairman,
one amendment.
Well, go ahead and so we can take the proper
I have
process.
one amendment on page 1, line 27, after dog.
Which dog?
Yeah, which dog?
Second dog.
The spotted dog and the striped dog.
This
The dog that don't hunt.
That's right.
No dog.
Okay.
That strike that has bitten, attacked, or inflicted injury on a person. I think we addressed that earlier in the bill, and this just allows the court at their discretion at this point.
I moved it.
Second.
All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. We've got that amendment, Sal.
And Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
if
sir.
I may, Matt, to the point of this bill, I mean, long and the short, animal control officers haven't had problems figuring this out on their own until somebody asked a question or someone down the AG's office had more time than they needed and said, no, animal control officers, y'all don't have any judgment. You've got, if a dog is bit, you got to do them all. And so you're just trying to give animal control officers a little bit of latitude to do what 99% of them have always been doing, and that's called common sense, and clarify what the law was always intended to do.
That's true.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I was taking some stew from a hunt club stew to a neighbor's house, and he had a. He had a big round dog sign, and the dog was barking at me, but I didn't pay attention to him, and when I stepped on the porch, that dog caught my britches. That didn't make him a dangerous dog, you see. It didn't really hurt me, but it scared me. He made me hurt myself getting back in the car.
Was the dog okay?
We tested him for rabies and other things, but I think he's going to be all right.
I think everyone here kind of understands the intent of this measure. Is anyone here that wishes to speak to this measure? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Virginia Newsom. I'm an animal control officer and also a Virginia Animal Control board member. And I just wanted to thank you for your time and your support on the amendments. This was much needed clarification for the courts, the officers, and it helps animal control officers be able to look at the entire totality of a dog bite situation and know what's an accident versus what is actually a dangerous animal. And it doesn't mean that we need to go and seek a dangerous dog summons on every dog that bites. So I thank you for your time and your support.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Heidi Meyer on behalf of the Virginia Federation of Humane Societies, and personally as an attorney who handles a lot of these cases, great thanks to Delegate Ferris and also to VACA for their efforts on this. And Delegate Orr, your comments are dead on. This is doing what I think you all had intended and making it very clear for the AG. So we support this bill wholeheartedly.
Let me ask that here. Is there anyone here that opposes this bill? Delegate Orr.
Move to report as amended.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. That's all we've got right now. If Delegate Morris, we'll talk to him about what happened on Delegate Freitas's milk bill. If we need to, we'll carry it before the committee. So meeting's adjourned.
Yeah, you know,
Well, it's still in the same difference.
Same thing.
We're not meeting again. Same thing. If something happens, we don't know.
That's kind of interesting.
I think that was it's all about bipartisan support and opposition. That way, you know,